Hey UVic students, my name's Emily Lowen. I'm your UVSS Director of Campaigns and Community Relations, and we're here for another interview with an MLA candidate. David, introduce yourself.
Hello there, my name is David Somerville. I'm the BC Liberal candidate in Victoria-Swan Lake, and I just want to encourage everybody to go out and vote in the advanced polls starting next week. And obviously, if you can't get out to that on Election Day on October 24th.
Awesome. And you can still request your mail-in ballot until October 17th. Okay, so we're going to get started with some rapid-fire questions. David, what's a book that really changed your life?
A book that really changed my life. Well, I guess A Matter of Confidence by Rob Shaw and Zussman. It's about BC politics. It's a great introductory book to anybody that wants to understand the Gordon Campbell years, the Christy Clark years, up until the present day. So
That was not a one-word answer, but
I
will check that out. Okay, do you have a guilty pleasure TV show? If so, what?
I would have, oh yeah, only one word answers. The Office.
Nice. Do you have a favorite coffee shop in the Victoria area?
I would have to say Good Earth.
So getting into the real stuff now, students overwhelmingly believe that the climate emergency requires an immediate and effective response from all levels of government. I'm wondering, what's your plan? What specific actions will you take to ensure that BC meets the required milestones of at least a 45% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 and net zero emissions by 2050?
Right, yeah, thank you. So our plan is still in the works. The platform has not been fully released, but I will point out that under the previous BC Liberal government, we did introduce a carbon tax, which it was revenue neutral. So families got to see the revenue from that tax, and it did help drive down the emissions that would have otherwise been increasing more if it had not been introduced. So we're very proud of that legacy. We are very disappointed actually to see that the NDP's current plan actually cut the Ministry of Environment's budget by roughly $4.6 million. $2 million of that is from the climate action budget, and $1 million is from the environmental sustainability budget. And we would like to see that fixed and refunded. Yeah, we would like to just point out that we have a good legacy on the environment in terms of creating parts of the Great Barrier Rainforest, and yeah, just making sure that everybody is looking after their environment and that we're taking climate change seriously.
Yeah, and even more than that, I'm wondering, do you have like the experience and the plan in mind to really deliver on climate action? Like aside from your party platform, the party's platform, I'm wondering like what specific actions, yeah, or not for yourself, just do you know what is required to really meet this existential threat?
Yeah, for sure. When I went to the University of Victoria, my minor was actually in geography, and I took a lot of courses that related to the environment, and we talked about policies like the carbon tax and investing in electric vehicle subsidies and stuff like that that kind of drives consumers to switch their behavior. And we know that if you're not getting consumers to switch their behavior, it's going to be impossible to meet your climate targets. So those type of policies are the ones that I would kind of highlight as important moving forward.
Okay. So we received some of these questions from students, and a lot of students wanted to know if you're committed to eliminating all oil, gas, and LNG subsidies in BC.
All right, so when it comes to oil and gas subsidies in BC, obviously the future is changing in terms of investment. Naturally, investment in oil and gas subsidies will be going down as we switch to a green economy. But currently, I'm assuming people are probably referring to the LNG Canada project, where the BC Liberals and the BC NDP actually agreed to vote on some subsidies for that project because in our point of view, climate change is a global issue and needs a response globally. So what that means is, even though we're sending LNG over to Asia and places like China, we're doing that with the idea in mind that it's replacing coal burning, which is actually the most emissions intensive fossil fuel. And if we could get trying to use LNG from BC that has the highest environmental standards, then I would prefer to have that than them just burning coal. So.
Okay. So UVic students have also expressed a really strong desire to create a more socially just province, and current measures by municipalities to reduce systemic racism in police forces simply haven't solved the problem, and economic inequities in marginalized groups continue to create these generational challenges for children, families, and communities. David, I'm wondering what specific changes you think should be made to the Police Act to address systemic racism in policing, or
Yeah, so
alternatively, just what's your plan on systemic racism?
yeah, so as a white man, as everyone can see, I obviously have not been subjected to systemic racism like other ethnic minorities have. My interest would be in getting the committee back at the legislature to resume work on the reforming of the Police Act. Unfortunately, when the snap election was called, all committee work on that file was halted, and we had MLAs that were Indigenous, they were from ethnic minority backgrounds, and we were going to be hearing from witnesses from in the community of people that have actually dealt with this issue. And obviously, with the way committees work, you have to hear the witnesses and get the information and the research. Government makes decisions on after its review and policies that could help address this issue. And it's my hope that when this election is over, that committee is restarted and we hear the underrepresented voices that need to be heard right now.
Okay, so in terms of affordability, costs like tuition and housing continue to rise while students' incomes have dropped significantly during the COVID-19 crisis. David, I'm wondering, how will you tackle the rising costs of education as well as the cost of living for post-secondary students?
Yeah, so when it comes to cost of education, obviously our platform is still being released and we'll have more information on that part of it. But on terms of the standard of living, there's plenty of policies that have been announced by my party that will directly impact students. One that comes to mind is the PST cut for 1 year and the elimination for 1 year and the cut for the next two. Families could save up to $1,700 in the first year, $900 in the years following that. And what that means is whether you're a student trying to pay your cell phone bill or your internet service, you're saving 7% off of those bills in the first year, and you're saving 4% the following 2 years. And like other issues like ICBC and transit, again, a big affordability issue for young people with ICBC doing the driver risk model and people that may be driving to school. They've been hit with the 40% increase of ICBC premiums. So if we could give them a choice of private insurance, like they do in Alberta, we could potentially lower that cost every year by $600. And with transit, the NDP actually cut the transit budget this year to balance the budget prior to the pandemic. And we would like to reverse those cuts. And our platform will actually have more details on our transit funding coming shortly. So, and yeah, with housing, obviously, building housing units is very important. The NDP promised 114,000 in 10 years. Roughly 3,000 have been built in 3 years. So it's going to take about 100 years to reach that target. I think that's not good enough. And I think lowering the PST on housing development so that they are able to get housing built faster and making sure that just the general cost of building is incentivized to build up and not stall the building like that's going on right now with the current NDP government.
Okay, thank you. So 4 years after Bill 23, which is the Sexual Violence and Misconduct Policy Act, we continue to hear from students that many post-secondary institutions have simply not implemented effective sexual violence and misconduct policies. So obviously this policy is pretty pivotal to ensure that students are safe from sexualized violence on campus. I'm wondering, how will you create and regulate minimum standards for this policy for post-secondary institutions across BC?
Yeah, so when I actually started going to UVic in 2015, this was a big issue at the time. There was not an adequate policy from the University of Victoria that was addressing this issue. So I was very happy when the BC Liberal government in 2016 introduced Bill 23. It has a lot of the enforcements that we need to make sure that universities comply. But unfortunately, over the last 3 years, I was disappointed to see the Minister of Advanced Education not use this legislation to its full potential. And I would hope that in the next government, obviously I'm hoping it's BC Liberal, that we would have a minister that would get tough with universities and make sure that a universally applied policy is adopted.
Okay. Just to clarify there, would you advocate for the implementation of minimum standards? Because currently there's large discrepancies across post-secondary institutions, due to a lack of resources, as well as a lack of specificity on the provincial level. So I'm wondering where exactly you fall in advocating for stronger policy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, me personally, I would love to see universality implemented, just because I think no matter what university you choose to attend for your post-secondary education, there should be resources and people to talk to available. I would definitely push any government that is formed in the next sitting, that if I get the honor to be an MLA, to pressure them to make sure that this policy is applied province-wide and that nobody is left behind just because of the university they choose to attend to.
Okay, thank you, David. Is there anything you want to say to students at the end here, how they can get in touch with you or get involved with your campaign?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so obviously this is a abnormal pandemic election. I've posted on my social media that anybody is welcome to help me with my campaign. I will not, me personally, I will not give anybody any responsibilities they do not feel comfortable with. And I understand that most candidates are following the same rule, that we are going to make sure that our volunteers do not feel pressured to do work they do not feel safe doing. And so if any youth want to get involved in local campaigns, you could do so safely. And if campaigns are not your thing, then even just joining an advocacy group or pushing for an issue that's important to you, either on social media or, like I said, like a community group, then I would highly recommend that you get involved, because the more young people that get involved in the political discourse, the more we get to see policies that help with affordability for young people and families, and I would like to see more of that.
Okay, thank you, David.
Thank you.